All right, let's start with the big question. Are we all broken because of someone else's mistake? It's weird to think about, right? The idea that something someone did thousands of years ago could somehow still mess with who we are today. But that's exactly what a lot of people believe about Adam, the guy who, according to the Bible, made a decision that changed the entire course of humanity. Now, whether you're religious or not, this idea raises a ton of questions about who we are, why we act the way we do, and whether we're stuck being flawed or if we can do something about it. First, let's break it down. What's the deal with Adam? To many, Adam isn't just some ancient story character, he's a symbol, a representation of humanity's first screw-up. The classic idea is that Adam and Eve had this perfect setup, total freedom, no pain, no suffering, and they blew it by disobeying God. Because of that, the story goes, they kind of broke human nature. And here's the kicker, that brokenness supposedly got passed down to every single person born after them. It's like inheriting a bad gene, except instead of just affecting your health, it messes with your soul, your morals, your ability to do good. But here's where it gets controversial. Did we actually inherit Adam's flaws, or is this just a metaphor? Some people argue that we're not literally born guilty or corrupted, but instead, we're born into a world that's already messed up because of all the bad choices humans have made over time. Others say no, it's deeper than that, that something in our very nature is flawed from birth. And honestly, when you look around the world, it's hard not to wonder if they're right. Why do people lie, cheat, steal, hurt each other? Why is it so much easier to do the wrong thing than the right thing? Is that just human nature, or is it something more?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were fighting against yourself? Like there's this part of you that wants to be better, kinder, stronger, but there's also this other part that's selfish, lazy, or even cruel. That struggle is something almost everyone can relate to, and it's at the heart of this whole Adam question. If we did inherit something from him, it's not just about guilt or punishment, it's about this internal battle between who we are and who we want to be. But here's the twist, not everyone agrees on what Adam's flaws even are. Some say it's guilt, that we're born already in trouble with God because of what Adam did. Others say it's more like a weakness, a tendency to mess up, to put ourselves first, to hurt others even when we don't mean to. And some people say it's not about guilt or weakness at all, it's about separation. The idea is that Adam's choice somehow created a distance between us and whatever higher power you believe in, leaving us all searching for something we don't even fully understand. Now, let's talk about the science of this for a second, because even if you take religion out of the equation, there's still this weird truth: humans are complicated. We're capable of incredible kindness and unimaginable cruelty. Psychologists call this the dual nature of humanity. We're wired to survive, which sometimes means being selfish, but we're also wired to connect, to love, to help each other. So, is this dual nature a reflection of Adam's flaws, or is it just how evolution shaped us? And here's where it gets even more interesting. If we did inherit Adam's flaws, does that mean we're stuck with them? Or is there a way to break the cycle? Some people believe that's where Jesus comes in, that his life, death, and resurrection were meant to fix what Adam broke. But even if you're not religious, the question still stands: can we overcome the flaws we're born with? Or are they just part of who we are? Think about your own life. Have you ever tried to change something about yourself and failed? Maybe it was a bad habit, a toxic attitude, or a pattern of hurting the people you care about. It's hard, isn't it? And sometimes it feels impossible. But does that mean it is impossible? Or does it just mean we haven't found the right way yet? Here's something to think about. What if Adam's real flaw wasn't just disobedience, but something deeper, like pride, fear, or the desire to control things? And what if we inherit not the act itself, but the tendency to fall into those same traps? If that's true, then maybe the solution isn't about fixing what's broken, but about learning to rise above it. Maybe it's about recognizing our flaws, owning them, and choosing to act differently. But let's not sugarcoat this. Changing yourself, breaking free from your flaws, it's not easy. It takes hard work, self-awareness, and sometimes a lot of pain. But it's also one of the most powerful things you can do. Because when you start to change yourself, you don't just change your own life, you change the lives of the people around you. You create a ripple effect that can spread farther than you'd ever imagine. So here's the big question I want you to think about. If we did inherit Adam's flaws, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to let them define us, or are we going to take responsibility for our own choices, our own actions, our own lives? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where those flaws came from. What matters is what we do with them. Let's dive deeper now. If you've ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try, you keep falling into the same mistakes, you're not alone. It's like we're running on some default programming, a code we didn't choose, but it's there, shaping how we think, feel, and act. And that brings us back to the big question, are we programmed to fail? If you think about it, a lot of people believe we are. They'll say humans are naturally selfish, greedy, and prone to messing up. That's just how we're wired. But here's where it gets interesting. While it may feel like that's true, science and philosophy suggest that's only half the story. Sure, we have instincts that can lead us into trouble, like the urge to protect ourselves at all costs, to take shortcuts, or to chase things that feel good in the moment. But we also have this incredible ability to rise above those instincts. It's like we're walking around with two voices in our heads, one pulling us down and the other pushing us to be better. So which voice do we listen to? And more importantly, can we change the program altogether? Let's get practical for a second. Think about habits. Have you ever tried to break a bad one? Maybe it's overeating, procrastinating, or snapping at people when you're stressed. It's tough, right? That's because habits are like grooves in your brain. The more you repeat a behavior, the deeper the groove gets, and the harder it is to climb out of it. But here's the good news: neuroscience has proven that we can rewire our brains. It's called neuroplasticity. The more you practice a new behavior like patience, kindness, or discipline, the stronger those neural pathways become. Over time, you can literally change the way your brain works. Now, let's tie this back to Adam. If we inherited anything from him, maybe it's the tendency to dig those grooves in the wrong places. But here's the thing: just because we inherited that tendency doesn't mean we're stuck with it. Every day we have the chance to choose a different path, to create new grooves, to rewrite the code. And yeah, it's hard. But isn't it worth it? I mean, what's the alternative? Staying stuck. Living a life controlled by impulses and habits that don't serve us? That's no way to live. But let's take this even deeper. What about the flaws we don't even realize we have? You know, the blind spots, the stuff that everyone else can see, but we're totally oblivious to. Those are the hardest to deal with because you can't fix a problem you don't know exists. So here's a tough question for you. When was the last time you asked someone to be brutally honest with you about your flaws? Not in a mean way, but in a way that helps you see the things you need to work on. Because the truth is, sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and we can't always trust ourselves to see the full picture. And this brings us to another point: humility. If Adam's story teaches us anything, maybe it's this: pride can be our downfall. Think about it in the story. Adam and Eve didn't just disobey, they wanted to be like God, to have control, to decide for themselves what was right and wrong. And isn't that what we all do sometimes? We think we know best. We don't want to listen to advice, admit we're wrong, or let go of control. But here's the paradox: the moment you admit you don't have it all figured out, that's when you start to grow. That's when you start to change. So let me ask you, what's one area of your life where you need to let go of control? Maybe it's a relationship where you're always trying to be right. Maybe it's a goal you're chasing that's more about proving something to others than about what really matters to you. Whatever it is, what would happen if you just let go? If you stopped trying to control everything and focused instead on becoming the kind of person who can handle whatever life throws at you. Now, here's where this gets really powerful. If we can admit our flaws, if we can face them head on, we can start to break free from them. But it's not enough to just recognize them, you have to take action. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. They think, well, this is just who I am. I can't change, but that's a lie. You can change. It's just not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen without effort. And it's definitely not going to happen if you're not willing to get uncomfortable. And let's talk about that discomfort for a second. Because honestly, that's where the magic happens. Growth doesn't come from staying in your comfort zone. It comes from pushing yourself, from failing and trying again, from doing the hard things that most people avoid. So here's another question for you. What's one thing you've been avoiding because it's too hard or too uncomfortable? Whatever it is, that's probably exactly what you need to do next. But let's be real, this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. Because whether you believe in Adam or not, the truth is, we're all connected. Our flaws, our choices, our actions, they don't just affect us. They ripple out into the world, shaping the lives of the people around us. So when you work on yourself, when you become a better person, you're not just changing your life, you're changing the world in small but powerful ways. And that brings us to one final thought for this part: hope. Because no matter how flawed you feel, no matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how many times you've failed, you are not beyond redemption. You are not stuck. You are not defined by your past. Every single day is a chance to start over, to make a different choice, to become the person you were meant to be. And that's not just some cheesy motivational line, it's the truth. You're not programmed to fail. You're programmed to learn, to grow, to overcome. All right, let's get real. If we've inherited flaws, whether from Adam, our upbringing, or just the messy reality of being human, then the question isn't why we're flawed anymore. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? Because here's the truth, a lot of people don't want to face you have a choice. Every single day, in every moment, you have the power to choose who you're going to be. But let's be honest, it's not that simple, is it? If it were, none of us would struggle. So why does it feel so hard to change, even when we want to? Let's break it down. The first thing standing in your way is probably your mindset. A lot of us walk around stuck in this loop of excuses. That's just who I am, I've always been this way, it's too late for me to change. Does any of that sound familiar? Here's the thing, those are just stories you're telling yourself. They're not facts. They're not reality. They're a narrative you've built to protect yourself from the discomfort of growth. But every time you choose to believe those excuses, you're giving away your power. You're letting your flaws define you instead of deciding for yourself who you want to be. So let's challenge that right now. Ask yourself, who am I choosing to be today? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, today. Because the truth is, you are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the sum total of all the times you've fallen short. You are whatever you decide to be in this moment right now. And yeah, that's terrifying, because it means you don't have anyone or anything to blame anymore. But it's also freeing. It means you're not stuck. It means you have the power to change your story, starting today. But let's get practical, because change doesn't happen just because you've decided to want it. It takes action. And honestly, it takes small actions. A lot of people try to overhaul their entire lives all at once, and when they fail, they give up. But real change, the kind that sticks, comes from tiny, consistent shifts in your behavior. It's about choosing, in the smallest moments, to act differently than you did before. For example, let's say you have a tendency to lash out when you're angry. You've probably done it so many times that it feels automatic, like you don't even have control over it. But the truth is, you do. The next time you feel that anger rising, you have a split second, a tiny window where you can make a different choice. Maybe that choice is taking a deep breath instead of yelling. Maybe it's walking away for a minute to cool down. It might not feel like much, but that one small choice can interrupt the cycle. And if you keep making that choice over and over, guess what? You're creating a new habit. You're rewriting the code. Here's another example. Let's say you struggle with procrastination. You want to change, but every time you sit down to work, you get distracted. Instead of trying to force yourself to be perfect all at once, try this: set a timer for just 5 minutes. Tell yourself, I'm only going to focus for 5 minutes, and then I can stop if I want to most of the time. You'll find that once you start, it's easier to keep going. Again, it's about those tiny, manageable steps. You don't have to change everything overnight. You just have to start. Now, let's talk about something a little deeper. Why do we stay stuck in our flaws in the first place? A lot of the time, it's because we're scared. Scared of failure. Scared of success. Scared of losing the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar is hurting us. Think about it. How often do you stay in situations, habits, or patterns that you know aren't good for you, just because it's easier than facing the unknown? Maybe it's a toxic relationship. Maybe it's a job you hate. Maybe it's a version of yourself that you've outgrown but you're too afraid to let go of. So here's a question: what are you holding on to right now that's keeping you from becoming the person you want to be? And be honest with yourself, because the answer to that question could change your life. Here's the truth: breaking free from your flaws isn't just about willpower. It's about self-awareness. It's about understanding why you do the things you do, so you can start to change them. And one of the best ways to build that self-awareness is through reflection. Take a few minutes at the end of each day to ask yourself, what did I do well today? What could I have done better? What choices did I make that moved me closer to the person I want to be? You don't have to beat yourself up over the things you got wrong. Just notice them. Acknowledge them. Learn from them. Because every mistake is an opportunity to grow if you're willing to see it that way. But here's something a lot of people don't talk about. You're not going to do this alone. You can't. If you want to break free from the cycle of flaws, you need support. That might mean finding a mentor, joining a community, or simply surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to be better. Because the truth is, the people you spend the most time with have a huge influence on who you become. So ask yourself, are the people in my life helping me grow, or are they keeping me stuck? And if it's the latter, what are you going to do about it? And let's not forget one of the most important parts of this entire conversation, grace. Because no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you want to change, you're going to mess up. You're going to fall back into old habits. You're going to have days where it feels like you're not making any progress at all. And that's okay. Growth isn't a straight line, it's a messy, complicated, 2 steps forward, 1 step back process. The key is to keep going, to forgive yourself when you fall, and to get back up every single time. Because every time you do, you're proving to yourself that you're stronger than your flaws, that you're capable of change, that you're worth the effort. And here's the most powerful part of all of this: when you start to change yourself, you inspire others to do the same. Your growth gives them permission to grow. Your courage gives them courage. So, don't underestimate the impact of your journey. It's not just about you. It's about the ripple effect you create in the world. So, let me leave you with one final question. What's one choice you can make today, right now, that will move you closer to the person you want to be? It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something. Because at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to: choice. You can't control where you came from or what you've inherited, but you can control what you do with it. And that's where your power lies. And there it is, the cycle of flaws, the power of choice, and the hope of growth. The rest is up to you.